Websites like Amazon, they provide a really rich search engine and search pages. For example, if you want to search for a product on Amazon, you can provide and add a lot of search criteria. For example, you can search by name, by color, by description, category, seller, and so on and so forth. But did you ever wonder or ask the question how this is implemented in the background or in behind the scenes? In this video, I will teach you how we can use the criteria queries using Spring Data JPA. And we will see together, and I will teach you how to implement advanced search queries. Because we all know the limits of the JPA or JPA repositories or crude repositories, or even writing SQL queries or raw SQL queries. Sometimes, or most of the times, for these cases or for the search cases, they do not respond or they do not give us the best experience or the best way to implement such queries. But criteria queries or the criteria builders, they provide us with the necessary tools and functions to do so. This is what we will learn in this video. My name is Ali. I'm a senior software engineer and I do videos every week. So if you're new to my channel, just go ahead and subscribe and enable the notifications to get notified every time I publish a new video. If you like my content, it just take 1 second, only 1 second, to smash the like button and give me a thumbs up so I can continue on producing content like this for you guys. Also, go ahead and join the best developers community that we are building right now. I will leave you all the descriptions and all the links in the description below. So I will be really happy to see you in our community. And also don't forget to leave a comment on what you want to learn next. Thank you, and let's dive to the code now.
Let me first explain or give you some situations where we need to use criteria queries before even going and diving into the code. So first of all, what is criteria queries? The criteria queries, it enables us to write queries without doing raw SQL, as well as give us some object-oriented control over the queries, and which is one of the main features of Hibernate. So the criteria API allows us to build up criteria query object programmatically, and where we can apply different kind of filtrations, rules, and logical conditions. So this is the definition or the global definition of the criteria queries. Now let me give you the example or the use case where we need to use, or where we don't have the choice but using criteria queries. And in this case, no SQL, no GPQL, no JPA repositories will answer our need except criteria queries. So imagine we have, or we want to perform a search action, and in the search action we have multiple fields. Okay, so these fields, we are not, or we should not provide all of them. So let's take the previous example that we did in the past videos. So let's say I want to search employees by first name, last name, email, the date of birth, also by role, and so on and so forth. But when I want to perform the search as a user, I can provide just the first name. So I'm not obliged, or it's not a must that I need to provide all the inputs or all the attributes. So in this case, what I have to do a lot of if-elses in the backend in order just to write or to perform or to prepare my SQL queries. Means I'm gonna write some query like select star from employee where, and then the first test, if first name is not null, so then I add first name, and the next one if last name, and so on and so forth. And this is not easy at all. So the solution for this is Hibernate criteria or criteria queries object. So this is the use case, or this is when mostly we use this. So now I guess now you understand what we will implement together. Let's go ahead and dive and just write some code. To use or to implement the criteria queries, now we will use the classic namings or the classic approach. So we will not use repositories or one of the repositories like JPA repositories or CRUD and so on and so forth, but we need to implement our own DAO or DAO layer, which is the data access object. So this means like this means we need to implement our own repository to do this stuff. So this is our project, and in here I will create a class. I'm gonna call it, for example, employee repository. So I want to perform search, sorry, not repository, but you can call it repository or DAO or as you like, but I'm just gonna call it employee search DAO, just to be consistent with what we will implement inside this DAO class. So first of all, we need to do is we need to annotate this one with repository annotation. So we tell Spring that this is a repository annotation. All right. Now what we will do, we will just create one first method. The first one is public, and I want to return a list of employee, and for example find all by simple query. The first one I'm gonna just call it like that, find all by simple query, and I will tell you why I'm calling it this way. So I will require a string first name, a string last name, and for example let me just as a reminder see what do we have here. So we have the ID, first name, last name, email, birth date, role, and so on and so forth. So let's just add, I don't know, a date, birth date, or let's stick just this string email. So these are the fields that we want to use to search for the employees. Okay, so now I will explain what we exactly need in order to perform or to create criteria queries. So first of all, we need to create an object of type criteria builder, and it's from the JavaX persistence criteria, and I'm just call it criteria builder. And this one I need something or some object to access or to get the criteria builder. And in order to do this, we need to inject here, we need to inject an entity manager. So in this, I'm just gonna call it EM for shortcut. And now we can do em.get criteria builder. So this one will return the criteria builder. But one thing we need to pay attention here, we need to inject this entity manager, whether we create a constructor and we pass this entity manager as a parameter, or just have an autowired or add the autowired keyword here, or we can use the required args constructor from Lombok in order to inject a constructor for us. So you need to make the field that you wanted to be included in the constructor. Here it should be final. Okay, so now we created our criteria builder. Now I will next create a criteria query, And this criteria query, I can give it a type. It's a generic type, or it's a generic one or generic class. And here it's gonna be employee. I want to do criteria query for employee. And this one, I'm gonna call it criteria query equals criteria builder dot create query. And here we need to pass the result class. And in this case, it's gonna be employee dot class. All right, next step here, I'm just gonna add a comment. Here we will do select star, or select from, let's say select star. It's select star from employee. So how can we write this using objects? It's so simple. We need to use not root but root. So here we need to use an object or a class called root from the javax.persistence.criteria, and this root also it takes a class or a type as a parameter. So I will create a root of type employee because I want to do, or I want to create a query, means this means select from some class, and here I want to select from employee dot class, of course. So here this is the equivalent of select star from employee. Now I'm gonna prepare my where clause. For example, I'm gonna prepare the where clause. Let me put this in uppercase. So preparing the where clause means that we need to prepare some predicates, and each predicate is a clause. So for example, I want to have select star from employee where first name like something like I want to find all the employees that the first name is some like includes Ali, for example, or the keyword Ali or Alibu. So we will do it like so. First of all, we need to do a predicate, and it's always from the same package. So this predicate, it's gonna be, for example, let's say first name, first name predicate, okay? And this one equals criteria builder. And here what I want to do is, for example, as I mentioned, I want to do like, means I want to search. Okay, let me do this. Let me put it into a new line. So here what I want to do is, this one is preparing the where clause, and here I want to do where, something like that. So I want to do where first name like something like this. For example, like %% Ali. So anything or any employee that where the first name contains the word Ali. So here, if I want to provide, or I have to use first of all the keyword like. So we have a method called like, and for this method we need to use root.get, and here we need to provide the as you can see here, the get. So we need to provide the attribute name, and the attribute name here, it's first name, and the first name here you need to refer to the column name in the database. All right, so and then we need to provide the pattern or the object, and here what we want to use is something like this. And here we want to use our first name, and we are missing this percentage. So percentage in SQL means that means includes. So now we have our first predicate, first name predicate. I'm just gonna copy paste this one. And I will call it last name predicate. Last name, and here also it's gonna be last name. Same for this one. Also I will have the same for email predicate. And here it will be email and email here. Okay, so now I have all the predicates ready to use. Now, the way I'm gonna use this, so here we have this where first name like, where last name like, where email like. So now what are we missing here? So we are missing the boolean, we are missing the operation, or like the logical operation, not the boolean but the logical operation. So do I want to have first name equals and last name, or it's first name or it's first name or email or last name, and so on and so forth. So for that I'm gonna create a new predicate or predicate, for example, predicate the same, it's equals criteria builder dot here I can provide or, I can also provide and as you can see here for the or and the and, for example, let's say because we are doing a search, so if I provide or if I use the or method, I can provide a table or a list of predicates. So here I'm gonna provide first name predicate, last name predicate, and email predicate. So let me just inline it so you can see it. So let me format the code. Now this is my or predicate. So here the query or the output query, or the, let's say, final query here, the final query is gonna be select star from employee where first name like this, and here I'm gonna just make the query, or last name like this one, and so on and so forth, Ali, for example, or coding, and so on and so forth. So this is the query that will be built out of this predicate. Now the last step we need to do is criteria query dot where, and for the where we need to pass also a list of predicates, so we can whether pass them all or we can pass only this one, and in this case we need to pass this one because we want, this is the query that we want to write, and here we can have this or predicate. Okay, all right. Also we can have, for example, something else. We can say here, let me say, for example, first name and last name, here first name or last name predicate, and here I want my query to be or last name like and email like this. So just an example. I want to show you how we can play with predicates. So now here in the where clause, what we will do a criteria builder. Here again we will use our criteria builder, and we will use the and predicate, and the and predicate, it's gonna be the first name and email. It's entity manager. So here we created, or we changed our query into this. So instead of having or for all of them, I need to remove this one from here. So here we have our query, it's select star from employee where first name like this or last name like this one, and here we use the and email like this. Let me just extract this one. I'm gonna call it and email predicate. we can use whether the var keyword, or we can use we can create a type for this. So here now we can use and email predicate, for example, but I think it might be more readable the first way. All right, let's move on. Now we finished writing our query, everything is done, and we did all the predicates that we need. Now let's use, or let's get the result. Now we will need an object, or we will need an object from the same package, and this object is called typed query, and here we also can pass a class because it's a generic, and here it's gonna be our final query, and this one equals entity manager dot create query, and we need to pass the criteria query that we were building since the beginning. So now all the thing and the last thing that we need to do is return query dot get result list, and this way we just created a query, a criteria query that will gather all this information. So now our method requires these three parameters. I have a question for you. Imagine that we have a search criteria or a search request. We have an object that contains first name, last name, email, and email, and any of them can be null. So we will see next in a few moments how we can handle or how we can deal with this situation. First of all, let's go. Okay, so I need first to move this employee search DAO to, I'm gonna create a DAO package and put it in here, or I can call it search, or like you can call it whatever you want. Inside this package, I will create a search request object. Like this is the object that we will get from the front end, or like from our controller to our DAO method. So this guy will contain, or will have, just an example, I will reproduce the same thing but in a different way. Okay, let me add semicolons here, and also all this should be private. Do not forget the getter and setter. Setter annotation, and our object is ready to use. Let's close this and close this guy too. So this is the first method. I'm just gonna collapse it, and now let's create a second method. It's gonna be public, also a list of employee, and this one we will call it find all by, I'm just gonna call it criteria, not advanced criteria, just criteria. And this one, it will take an object of type search request. I will just call it request. So you see, first of all, we have one difference. Here we are requesting the parameters, so all of them are mandatory. Of course, we can pass null as values, but in this request we don't know. But here, the difference that here we know that we have these values, but within this request we don't know if we have values or not. So first of all, let's go ahead and create our criteria builder. Let's call it again criteria builder equals entity manager dot get criteria builder. Next, our criteria query of type employee, I will call it criteria query equals criteria builder dot create query of employee dot class. So now we have almost everything. Next, what I will do, I will create a list of predicates. So here I will just call it predicates equals new array list. So in order not to fall into the null pointer exception, so here as usual it's gonna be the select from employee, and we need for that to create a root object, and this root is of type employee2. I will just go call it root equals criteria query dot from employee class. Okay, now our root object is ready. Here we will perform just few tests. First of all, if request dot get email, or let's start with the first name, is not null. So if we have this, what we will do, we will create a predicate as we did before. First name predicate equals criteria builder dot like, and we will use the same code as we did before. And here like, let me just align it, well, not align it, but put it in a new line so it always still visible. And here it's root dot get, and here we need the attribute name, and the attribute is first name, and then we need the value, and the value is as we did before. It's gonna be something like that, percentage here and percentage here. And this, it's gonna be request dot get first name. All right, and next what we will do, it's gonna be predicates dot add first name predicate. I will just go ahead, just to make this a bit faster, I will just go ahead and copy paste it 2 times, and this one is gonna be last name, here also last name, and last name, I will rename this one to last name. Also this one is gonna be email, same here, and let's rename this one. I will call it email predicate. All right, so now we have everything. So what we need to do now is as simple as this view or this line of code. So here it's gonna be our criteria query dot where, and here for example I want it's a search, so when we perform a search action, so it should be always there is a typo here, so it should be always or predication, like or this or this or this. So that's why we call it search, unless we have something specific so we can implement it later on. Okay, so here it's gonna be where, and now and inside this one it's gonna be the criteria builder dot or, and in this or it's gonna be predicates dot to array, and for the array we need to pass a new predicate of 0, and it will return a table of predicates. This method will return a table of predicates. So once all this is done, we need our typed query, and this typed query of type employee, and I will call it just query or final query, and it's gonna be am dot or our entity manager dot create query of criteria. Where is my object and my criteria query, and finally, as we did before, it's gonna be return query dot get result list. So this is how, or in this way, we just implemented something which is a bit more advanced, but using always criteria queries. And as I mentioned, this is a bit advanced because we need to handle a little bit the way we want to do this. Also, you can add some more checks, and for example using the string utils class and check if it's not blank or if it's not null, and so on and so forth. So I hope this was helpful for you. See you in the announcement.